what is your understanding of the new escalations? Because many people think that they may attack, they may try to invade Iran from the southern part in this weekend. What is your understanding of that?
Have you ever done an invasion?
No.
I have. We're not going to invade anywhere, not with 10,000 troops. All right? We can do a raid. Maybe we can go in, do some things, get out, maybe. Might get away with it. But we're not invading anything. So this is a stupidity. People talking about an invasion have never done it. They don't know what it is. They don't know anything about the military. They don't know anything about war. They don't know anything about logistics. 2 Marine battalion landing teams. You could scare, Red Beach 1 and Red Beach 2. Yay, we went in. We advanced 500 meters, and then we have to stop. Now, where's the follow-on echelon? Oh, there isn't a follow-on echelon. So you're sort of stuck where you're at right now. Yeah. It's not a big beachhead now, is it? No. 500 Marines isn't a lot of Marines. There was like 4,000. Yeah, most of them are like logistics and air wingers, actual, boots on the ground, rifle companies. No. And so this is just stupid. Anybody talking about a ground invasion literally doesn't know what they're talking about. There could be a raid, but you're not going to hold any territory with 10,000, people. And like I said, there's only 4,000 Marines deployed in the area, and half of them aren't combat troops. Half of them, they're wingers staying on the airplane.
It seems they have more than 10,000. They're talking about 50,000 soldiers.
Where?
Being in.
How are you going to get 50,000 soldiers? Where do they come from?
I don't know.
They don't come from anywhere yet. They're not there. And again, they're not soldiers. We have a lot of airmen. Did you take a look at the guys that died in that first drone attack? Those aren't frontline combat troops. Those are fat reservists. I mean, I'm not picking on them. I'm sorry they're dead, but these weren't the tip of the spear. These aren't guys that you've been out there doing their push-ups, pull-ups, and running and hiking with 45-pound packs, 90-pound packs, 110-pound packs. Humping mortar rounds, base plates, and all. No, they don't know how to do that. They were sitting in a bunker and they got killed. The vast majority of the people in theater are just that: support troops, logistics troops. There's no combat troops. And the combat troops, they require sustainability. That means we got to have, let's just make it this very, very clear. We're making this up as we go along. We don't have a plan. If we had a plan, the Marines would have been deployed forward up front. This is all reactive. If we had a plan, the paratroopers would be in theater, ready to rock and roll. If we had a plan, the Rangers and Delta would already be on the ground doing their stuff. This is all reaction because we thought we were going to win this war that quick. We thought we were going to drop a couple bombs, kill the Ayatollah, down goes the regime. But look at the stupidity of this president. The new president of Iran. He's the same president. Same guy. Guy I talked to back in September before the war. It's not a new president. It's not a new leadership. It's the same freaking leadership. Araghchi's the same foreign minister. Yeah, they killed some people, but they got replaced. That's what happens when you have a system. And what all the Iranians said is that they're not looking for a ceasefire. They're looking for the war to end and to make sure there's not another war. And if those conditions can be met, they'd be willing to stop the war. But until then, no, they're going to keep going, keep plugging away. And I loved all the people tracking the missile launches. They fired this many day one. Look, it's getting smaller. They nothing left. Last night, boom. The Iranians went, yeah, eat that and die. And they'll just keep doing that. The Iranians have been planning this for 20 years. There's nothing reaction about the Iranians. The Iranians are going with a plan. We're reacting to the plan. There's not going to be a ground invasion. Simply won't be. There, like I said, there might be a raid. But again, the raid to accomplish what? Having planned a major raid during the Iraq War, the Gulf War, and having defended it before the Commandant of the Marine Corps and a panel of 4- and 3-star generals, and having to answer a lot of questions as to what's the risk gain. I mean, are we about just proving that the LAV-25, which at the time was a relatively new thing, can be inserted by helicopter? We can run around, shoot things up, and then come out. Because if that's what it's about, we're not too thrilled about this because there's Marines on that can die. There has to be a reason for the raid. If you could, secure the 60% enriched uranium with a raid in, up, out, something like that would be a raid, a reason. Karg Island, we're not going to hold Karg Island. We're not even going to take Karg Island. But even if we did, has anybody looked at a map? see where Iran is, and you understand that Karg Island is sort of low and flat, and it's going to be leveled, and the Iranians know everything about it. We know nothing about it. No, it would be a death match. It would be stupid. This president is dumber than hell. I think the Iranians said it best. He's negotiating with himself. He's making things up. There's a lot of wishful thinking. Anytime the Iranians, first of all, the Iranians made it clear they're not going to negotiate with the United States. That just isn't going to happen. And so he has Egypt, Pakistan, I think Turkey, and maybe some others, trying to reach out to the Iranians. And if the Iranians take the call, the president says, see, they're negotiating with us. No, they're not. They just took a call from the Pakistanis. What they told the Pakistanis is tell the Americans to pound sand. Trump doesn't want to hear that. This man lives in a fantasy world. He's going to he needs to create the conditions where he gets to say, I won the war. The Iranians aren't going to play that game. They don't care about domestic American politics. What they care about is ending this war so that there never is another war. That means that Israel doesn't get to do what it's been doing, and the United States doesn't get to do what it's been doing. And that requires the Gulf Arab states to be broken, totally broken to the extent that they no longer look to the United States as their saviors, that they realize they have to live in this region in peace and harmony with the Iranians, means they have to start treating the Iranians with respect. This might require some regime change in the Gulf Arab states. In the United Arab Emirates in particular, maybe it's time for that family to go goodbye. Maybe in Bahrain, goodbye. Maybe in Kuwait, goodbye. It's all possible. These aren't popularly elected regimes. These are monarchies installed by the British. So it's not like, these people earned their right to be there. They were given it. And then they just sit there on their oil and they build giant palaces and live this pompous, lavish lifestyle where, because of the amount of money they can apply to a given problem, they've been able to solve most problems. Well, you ain't solving the Iranian problem too well. And I think they're going to be broken. The United States is already broken. We don't have a solution. We don't have a solution to the Strait of Hormuz, and it's only going to get worse. The Iranians hold all the cards. So, Donald Trump is he's in a fantasy world because he can't admit that he made a mistake. He can't admit that Pete Hegseth, the worst Secretary of Defense in the history of Secretary of Defenses, lied to him, misled him. And he needs to create this narrative that says, I am the conquering hero, that because of my decisive action, great things happened. The Iranians aren't going to. The sad thing is we had a deal and now we don't. Now there is some talk, and I'm pretty hopeful for if it turns out, where the Iranians said that, they may be willing to let the Russians serve as a mediator. This is what I've been pushing for. This is what I pushed for when I went to Russia. I went to Russia and I made as big a noise as I could about getting the Russians to be mediators here, because that is the solution. A Russian mediation can solve a lot of problems, because now Trump can do some posturing, and such. But it's early on, and again, the end result has to be the United States out of the Middle East and Israel accepting a Palestinian state, and there needs to be international security guarantees. I always love it how the Ukrainians are, we need security guarantees. Well, I think the Arab world needs security guarantees against Israel. Israel can't be allowed to have the same military that it's been having. It has no right. It can't be allowed to go out and bomb everybody. When they bombed 5 countries in the last week. Come on, man.
Even they're bombing Syria, and Ben Gvir is talking about assassinating, the head of HTS in Syria. It's amazing, Scott. When it comes to the war, you've mentioned it's going to be, if they attack, it's going to be a raid on part. What would be the outcome of that? What do they need? I would I would somehow, I'm not 100% sure, but I really believe that they cannot achieve anything if they go for it. Those 400, kilogram of enriched uranium, they're not gonna find it. They're not gonna do anything of that sort of grabbing it,
But I can't imagine the Iranians saying, all right, we got 460 kilograms of 6% uranium hexafluoride. All right, guys, let's put it in a lightly guarded facility near the coast of the Persian Gulf. All right. And we'll just sort of like leave it there so the Americans can come in and launch a raid and take it. Now, I think it's like deeper inside Iran in a mountain, which means the raid will have to penetrate deeply into Iranian airspace. We'll get shot down on the way in, and then we have Black Hawk Down all over again. A helicopter goes down. We got people on the ground, survivors, Iranians coming all around them. Close air support's brought in. More helicopters go, more aircraft go down, and now the whole thing's bogged down before it even began. Because this isn't World War II. In World War II, you send in the C-47s, and 3 of them get shot down. So sad, too bad, wouldn't want to be you, but you just keep going. No, this is the modern day. Helicopter down. We got to come in with combat search and rescue. We got to put guys on the ground. We got to do the whole Black Hawk Down thing. We don't leave a man behind. And then everybody dies. If we do a raid into Iran, my prediction is the entire raiding force will be destroyed. Because we're going into, again, this isn't carefully planned. Everything that's being done here is being done for political reasons, not for legitimate military reasons. There's no reason to go after the 450 or 60 kilograms of uranium hexafluoride. None whatsoever. We had a deal where they were going to give it to us. And my advice to the president would be, do whatever you can to get that deal back on the table. Whatever it takes, to include getting the hell out of the Middle East. Tell the Iranians, we're going to get the hell out of the Middle East, but you got to turn over that 450 kilograms of uranium hexafluoride. Enriched 60% enriched, 60%. And this is where the Russians can come in. The Russians can do this stuff, lifting of sanctions and things of that nature. I think the Iranians would give it up. It's caused them nothing but trouble, caused them nothing but problems. And what I would tell the Iranians is, we'll leave the bases. And we'll work with the Israelis to, change behavior. But we need you to, that deal that was on the table, we need you to do that deal. You're closing the door forever on your potential of developing nuclear weapons. That's just the way it is. You're going to sign a deal that says you will never be able to build nuclear weapons. You will be permanently limited to 3.75% enriched uranium, carefully safeguarded, etc. That's it. And I think Iran would do it, but not with the Americans dictating. I
really don't think that they're going to do it.
Well,
those days are gone. In my opinion, those days are gone. I don't think so. You have to understand what's going on in Iran right now.
I know full well what's going on in Iran, and I know that the Iranian people have said they will rip the president apart if he negotiates with the United States. Okay, but now the Russians come in. And if the Russians sit down with you and go, okay, stupid people, because you are stupid right now. You're being destroyed. Yay, you're tough. You're really tough. We're really impressed. God, I'm so impressed how tough you are. But you say you care about your people. They're about to do permanent damage to your infrastructure. Permanent damage to your infrastructure. Yeah. You will never recover from this, ever. All right? So now you can say there, oh, God, we're the Shia. Ali, yay, we're so good. Karbala, 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 Karbala. Wow, that's stupid. How about lifting sanctions? How about getting the sanctions lifted, getting you fully engaged?
They don't want it anymore, Scott. The main problem.
Of course they want it.
They need it. Yeah, I know.
No,
but
they don't need it.
The priority is not the sanctions right now. The priority has changed because they're talking about Israel. Because they're talking about Israel. They know the second option. They know
what's their priority about Israel.
Yeah, Israel should be denuclearized.
Should be what? Destroyed? Iran doesn't get to make that decision.
Yeah, but Israel, right now, the problem is Israel, Scott. As long as Israel has nukes, these nuclear weapons.
Iran is not, Nima, this is fantasy. This is cocaine sniffing fantasy. If you think Iran has the leverage to get Israel to give up its nuclear weapons like that, you're hiring a kite. You know how Israel will give up its nuclear weapons? On Iran.
Yeah,
that's how they'll give them up.
This is not my point. This is not my point that forcing Israel. This is that as long as Israel keeps up with his nukes on its soil and is talking about Samson option, there is no way to have some sort of balance.
Israel's never talked about the Samson option. Israel has never talked about the Samson option.
They talk about, their minister said that about Gaza. They said use the nukes against Gazans. The Gazans have nothing.
That's a sniffing minister who's high as a kite, who's sitting there saying stupid stuff. Find me the official policy statement of the Israeli government that said we'll drop nuclear weapons on Gaza. Because we have Americans that said the same thing, and they're just stupid mouth-breathing morons. Okay, let's get to the official policies of the Israeli government. There is an official protocol that exists between Israel and the United States on the use of nuclear weapons. And Israel will not violate that protocol.
I really don't think that Iran would accept.
Then Iran dies.
The worst thing has happened, Scott.
No, the worst thing has not happened.
Nothing. What else can they do? They want to use nuclear bombs? Go ahead and use it.
And then what? How tough are you then with your dying of your radiation sickness?
They're going to see what they have. They're going to see, Scott. I think they have to understand
that. The Iranians are going to unveil their 3 15-kiloton nuclear weapons that they managed to scrape together. Yay!
I'm saying I think that they know how to respond to that, because it's not my opinion, my personal opinion, because I talked with many of them when I was in Iran. I know
the people.
They said, what?
Decision makers or the people?
I'm talking about decision makers. I'm not talking about.
And you're telling me right now that the decision makers in Iran won't go for, because first of all, what you're saying is it doesn't conform with the Iranian government's saying. The Iranian government is saying that if the United States leaves the Middle East and Israel, if there's behavioral checks and balances on Israel, they never once mentioned Israel's nuclear weapons as a precondition. That's your thing. They never mentioned it. And
what I think the official policy is, Iran is keeping this level of enrichment. They're not going to give up the level of enrichment because they want to be prepared for Israel. If Israel decides to attack Iran using nuclear weapons, they want to be prepared to respond to Israel. That's the whole concept. What I've learned, it's not my opinion. It's not my opinion to put it. I'm not discussing from my point of view. It's because I talk with many of these decision makers in Iran. They said they're prepared to the end. They said the end is the use of nuclear weapons. They're prepared for that. It's not something.
Well, I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, it's like looking at a person in the ocean.
The other part.
The Russians can save your ass. The Russians can save your ass. That's the only chance you have. Because otherwise, you're just going to get pounded to death.
You know, Scott, even Medvedev said that 2 days ago. He said that the outcome of this war would be NPT, Iran withdrawing from NPT and being a nuclear power, having nuclear bombs. And he said that. When someone like Medvedev says that, it means something. It doesn't mean that his assessment of what's going on in Iran is.
That's the only assessment that matters. Did Putin say it?
No.
Don't talk to me about Medvedev. Don't talk to me about Karaganov. Don't talk to me about anybody.
Yeah, when it comes to Russia, Scott, when it comes to Russia, we have to understand what's going on against Russia and Iran, because I think they're fighting the same war. What Russia is fighting, what Iran is fighting is the same. The same people, by the way, the same people.
They're not fighting
the same war in Ukraine are the same people who are in Israel.
They're not fighting the same war, Nima.
Yeah,
because Russia's not ready to commit suicide. Okay, Iran is apparently, according to you. That's not the same war. One is a rational approach towards achieving objectives that are well pointed, laid out. The Russian approach, ending the war. I'd hope that Iran would be on that course too. But if Iran is saying we're willing to die and commit suicide, The Russian, because Iranian suicide means the destruction of the global economy. And Russia's not about that. I can guarantee you Russia's not about that. Russia's not looking to die with Iran. They're not willing to hold their hands and die with Iran.
They're not there to wreck the whole economy. They're there
the Russians are there to find a path to peace. That's the guaranteed.
Yeah, but they're not trying to destroy Russian economy or Chinese economy, because they're considered, so far in the Strait of Hormuz, all those Chinese and, even Indian, even Pakistani tankers were passing through the Strait of Hormuz. This is not the problem with the world.
Because they're paying money.
Yeah, they're paying, exactly. They don't have these countries because they're saying that these are friendly countries. The problem is how to put pressure on the United States. It's not how to put pressure on China or Russia. And these countries understand what's going on with the case of the Strait of Hormuz particularly, because right now the main problem, before this war started, Donald Trump was all about nuclear weapons and nuclear program. Right now, his main concern, priority, is the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Of course it is, because the Iranians, that's their trump card. But again, do you consider Donald Trump to be a rational actor or an irrational actor?
I don't see Donald Trump being a rational actor. I don't see anymore Donald Trump being irrational. Or nobody.
Right, so it's irrational.
Irrational. He's irrational.
100% irrational. Emotionally driven, not fact driven.
Yeah.
All right. So what will happen in your mind if the Iranians, and look, don't get me wrong, I think the Iranians are doing a fantastic job. I mean, they have a plan. They've been sticking to their plan. We've been reacting to them from day one. So they got the whole OODA loop sequence going in their favor. They're driving the decision-making cycle and all that. But the difference is, on Iran's best day, they can put 5 nuclear weapons on a missile and take Israel out. And then Iran will cease to exist. I hope Iran understands that. Everybody says we're ready for it. You don't know what you're ready for, because life will end for everybody. The United States will now come in. It won't be Israeli nukes. Be American nukes, and ours are a lot bigger and more. And you want to see how many 20 million people in Tehran? Yeah, you know what a 1 megaton bomb will do to Tehran?
Why would the United States do that if Iran
if Iran used nuclear weapons against Israel?
Yeah, no. I'm talking about why would the United States use nuclear weapons against Iran? Is it because of Israel? Or because of the United States?
Donald Trump is an irrational actor who's
but
more than anything.
Objective. Yeah, let's assume
his main objective is not to be beaten by Iran.
So you think that he's going to go nuclear just because of he doesn't want to be beaten? I think Donald Trump understands. After all, Scott, so far Donald Trump tried to do regime. The main goal, I think, was regime change. It wasn't about the military operation. If it was a military operation, they were prepared for the military operation, for the war. They were not prepared for this war. They were deceived by Mossad, I think, basically, and some people in CIA, that they can do regime change. You remember, you and I discussed this before. You said if they go there, they're going to do regime change. It's going to be a regime change operation. But that was a fantasy. I think it was sold by Mossad.
Well, you remember what I said about regime change? I said it would be a regime change operation. It's the only way they could do to, because of the limited military capabilities. I said the only way we could do this is to do a regime change that collapsed Iran before their missiles could become fully engaged. But I also said that you can't initiate the regime change unless you have certainty of outcome. And I said, that means that the Israelis need to have this place totally penetrated. The United States needs to have it totally penetrated, and we've got to go in there and we got to get it done. And across the board, a fundamental regime change isn't killing the supreme leader. Regime change is suppressing the totality of the establishment. And if you could do that, then you could initiate this action. I think that it's clear that they couldn't do that. That they were laboring under the impression that by killing Ali Khamenei, that achieved that's Donald Trump's simplicity. And I blame the Iranian, missions. They don't have the Iranian Mission Center anymore, but this, Near East Division of the CIA, they've got to know. I mean, they've got to know the truth about Iran. I say they've got to because the CIA doesn't know the truth about Russia today. So, clearly the CIA can start believing their own propaganda. And I think that's what happened. I think one of the things that happened in Iran is that we started, if you go back into history, there was a guy, Steve Ritter, good old Steve Ritter, my good old friend, hates me. He was doing the regime change in Iraq, but he also did the Iran. And there was a time, I forget, in the 80s or something, where we needed intelligence, maybe in the early 90s. And we had a network of people dating back to, the Shah's time, all the stay-behinds. And they were in there, and we had them all there, and they're reporting. And then the requirement came down, you need to increase your Iran reporting. And Steve Ritter, they were running a mail operation where they were basically mailing letters out to Munich. And you could do that every now and then. So, you get 5,000 pieces of mail going out today, 3 letters going to Munich. That's not raising the profile. That's normal. Normally the CIA would have pre-thought this thing out. How do you test the postal system, see what triggers it, and then you keep that sustained thing going, to get those letters out there and all that with the secret writing in them and all. Richter was told, double down. So Richter basically told everybody, just start mailing letters. And so what happened is suddenly the mail going to Munich went way up, and the Iranians went, grab the mail, knock on the door, bring them in, open it up, secret writing, interrogate, find the secret writing materials, and they rolled up the whole network. We lost everybody in Iran that quick. We tried to rebuild it with rapid recruitment. This was in this would have been in the 2000s, where we, all those people that traveled around the world, all the, professors and the scientists that went to this meeting, that meeting, we came in there and we did what we do. Sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes it worked. Get them drunk, get them with a whore, take pictures, confront them with the reality that their family life's over and they're going to be killed when they go back to Iran, and they start rolling over for you. And so we get them all in there, but now we're communicating using Gmail, the old Gmail, CIA Gmail account. And, again, I forget who came up with it. I can't remember if it was the Iranians that rolled it up first and then gave it to the Russians, or then gave it to the Chinese, or the Russians gave it. Bottom line is, somebody figured it out. And so the second wave of recruitment went away, which means now we're totally dependent upon Israel. Israel, of course, has been working with the Kurds and working with MEK and working with others. And so now you got Israel in there doing their thing. And the Israelis, they assassinate scientists, and they put, viruses in to cause things to blow up. They blow things up, and they're like, we're the Israelis. We're so damn good. We're awesome. We even did a raid on this archive and took all these papers out, although they didn't, and all this stuff. And so the CIA said, well, rather than us doing a third round of recruitment, we're just going to rely on the Israelis and dovetail on the Israeli op. And so the Israelis are telling them, we infiltrated, 5,000 Starlinks, and we have these cells, and we have this, and we have people in every city, and we have this, and we're doing this, and we got this, and we got that. The CIA's going, wow, you guys are really good. So when we kill Ali Khamenei, you're going to be able to get people in the street. And the Mossad's like, yeah, we got this. We are good. We are Mossad. And the CIA thought it was great. And they went and told the president that this is all going to happen. And the president called up Netanyahu, and people went, yeah, baby, we can do this. And they went forward. You never, ever, ever go to war based upon another country's intelligence. Never. Because that intelligence service doesn't work for you. And they're not working for your best interest. They're working for their government's best interest. And the Israelis have always wanted the United States to be doing what they're doing right now. This isn't Israeli fantasy. To have America dropping bombs on Iran, this is what they've been wanting for 20 years. And Donald Trump delivered it. But Donald Trump was led down that path by a CIA that had an op pulled on it. It's the old, the Israelis are so good they can do nothing wrong thing. We know that Iran is a tough target, but the Israelis got guys inside there. Man, the Mossad's really good. They're really awesome. Well, they're not bad. but they're not perfect. They make a lot of mistakes. And the one thing about the Iranians is they're not your typical target, I believe. I mean, every society has its weaknesses. Every society has its flawed individuals. And those people are susceptible to being recruited and betraying their countries. But this is where I think the West got it wrong. And this is where I think you actually have greater insight than I do and others. The Iranian people believe in the Islamic Republic. They may not think it's perfect. They would like a better life. They think they may even think that some of the Ayatollahs are corrupt and should be replaced. But the concept of an Islamic Republic, where religion is an important part of their daily lives, this is not fantasy to them. This is not imposed. This is what they want, and they have that. And then there's also the notion of Persian pride. I mean, we're talking about people who know their history, they know their culture, they know where they came from, and there's just a lot of pride in Iran that isn't going to be. They're not going to allow themselves to be sold out. So the notion that we could go in there and buy them off, the Venezuela solution, which is, that's the other thing, because Trump was told by the CIA we can buy the entire Venezuelan leadership. And I think he was told that we can buy the entire Iranian leadership. That's, one of the interesting analytical failures is what we did with the Revolutionary Guard. You remember Rafsanjani at the end of the Iran-Iraq War, Rafsanjani looking to rebuild Iran, and also learning, politically, what do we do with the Revolutionary Guard? These radicals who are out there, we want to do all this stuff. He turned them on to business and got them into the business sector, and they began to run businesses. And we said, that's corruption. Except they were actually doing good business. They were actually building things. They were actually producing things. They were actually making an energetic economy. But we called it corruption. And so we said that the Revolutionary Guard Command is all inherently corrupt. And when you have corrupt people, they can be bought off. Except they weren't corrupt. I mean, were there some examples of corruption? Sure. Money tempts everybody. But overall, the fact that the IRGC was heavily involved in Iran's economy is not a sign of societal failure. It's actually a sign of societal success. And it also further radicalized is the wrong word, but it further solidified the Islamic aspect. So you don't have secular businessmen out there. You have people who believe in the Islamic Republic doing business. It made it impossible to buy them off. Impossible to buy them off. We got Iran all wrong. I mean, you and I didn't. We got it right, I think. But the CIA, we being the United States, we got it all wrong. 110% wrong. We were so far off in terms of our assessments. And so we still don't understand what's going on there. Donald Trump's still not getting a qualified briefing. And nobody has the courage to go in front of him and tell him the truth. You saw James Webb, former Secretary of the Navy under Ronald Reagan. His son is out there now saying things that on the surface looks like he's condemning the attack, and but he just keeps saying things like, the Iranian regime is, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, no, that's not it, man. You got it wrong. And it seems people are impossible, that you can't say anything about Iran without saying, the murderous, thuggish Ayatollah regime. But it's not murderous and thuggish. They have a judiciary that's, we execute more people in America. I mean, we put more people in jail. Where's our murderous, thuggish justice system? The Iranians, they have stiff penalties for drug dealers. They have stiff penalties for adulterers, I guess. They have stiff penalty for traitors. Is it the justice system that I would want? I don't know. I don't live in Iran. I don't know what the problem, what would happen if you didn't have stiff drug penalties? Would Iran suddenly find a thriving narcotic black market where people are getting high in tea shops around the country and sinking society from within? So maybe you have to deter that because you live in a neighborhood where Afghanistan's producing opium and shipping it through, trying to get into other markets. Maybe you need that kind of deterrence. Adultery, if you're an Islamic republic and your moral values, family values are the cornerstone of what holds your society together, adultery is probably frowned upon. It's seen as if you allow adultery to take place, then your society will be, again, undermined from within and collapse from within, because it's what makes the Islamic Republic strong is, Shia faith, and the Shia faith is built around family. I mean, I got lectured by the Chechens about this, and they're not Shia, they're Sunni, they're Sufi, but again, their whole concept of family and the role that
Sufi is so close, by the way. Sufi is so close to Shia.
I know, that's most mystical. I had a long talk. I got to meet the Grand Mufti of Chechnya. I had a long conversation with him, and fascinating conversation. And I talked to him about the role that Chechnya could play. The Chechens are. They had a big parade the other day, and they're like, "You invaded Iran, we're coming in. We're coming in to fight on the side of Iran." The Sufi Chechens coming in to fight with the Iranians. But the point, we don't understand these things. We're so ignorant. We've allowed Islamophobia to corrupt our minds to where the only model we can see is Wahhabism, which is sort of a Western invention to begin with. Salafism is a Western perversion of traditional stuff. We can go back to what was it? I can't remember the name of the guy who defeated the Mongols. Back in Syria, began with a T, Tarmiya or something like that. But he defeated the Mongols and then tried to take over and say that he was the guy, but he was quickly pushed to the side, and that got pushed, and then this sort of became the beginning of Wahhabism. But the British allowed Wahhabism to flourish and be exported. The point is, we don't know Iran at all. And so therefore, I will say this, I get a little angry, but I don't know Iran. So you may be right, 100% right about your percent. You were in Iran, you know the language and all this stuff. I think you're making a mistake if you think that Russia and Iran have the same objectives. They don't.
No, they don't have. I don't think so.
Russia's objectives are about for Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
But Russia's objectives also include two major things: Iran being an integral part of BRICS, and the north-south economic corridor for Russia to get from St. Peter's down to Chabahar, and all that. And so for that to happen, Russia needs Iran to survive this war.
And Russia needs this war to end permanently.
Yes.
This
is why I think the Russians are the best mediators, because the Russians understand what the Iranians want. Permanent, and they don't want this war to begin. They don't want Israel to be dropping bombs this time next year or this time in 5 years. They don't want American forces back in the Middle East causing problems. When this war ends, done, finished. And then Iran can operate, with the economy being number one in their mind, how to, get into that Eurasian Economic Union, and how to make BRICS flourish. Could you imagine how strong BRICS would be if the Iranian economic potential was unleashed? I mean, for all the idiots blowing up Iranian steel mills, they just don't use their brains. Do you know how quickly China is going to come rolling into Iran to help rebuild these steel mills when the war ends? Iran has huge economic potential. And if the sanctions can be lifted and normalization of economic relations, Iran will do to the Gulf Arab states what Russia did to Europe, I believe. I don't see the Iranians, saying, Dubai is the place we want to put our money. I don't see that happening. I see the Iranians saying, Gulf Arab states, you're sunk. We will have nothing. We're going to become the economic.
It depends on them. I think it depends on them, because after all, when you talk about the leadership in the Arab states, in the Persian Gulf, it's different from the people in these countries. Iran considers the difference between the two. That's why I don't know if they change their attitude toward what's going on against Iran. And instead of cooperating with Israel and the United States to attack Iran, choose a different path. as we are witnessing right now with Oman, with the case of Oman, we see something different. It's not the way that UAE is. So it's
or Saudi Arabia. Remember, China came in and negotiated a rapprochement that turned out to be shallow. The Saudis can't be trusted. If I were the Iranians, I would never trust the Saudis ever again. And if I were the Iranians, I would never trust the UAE ever again. And if they're not careful, if this war goes on much longer, I think Iran's going to deal fatal blows to the UAE. You take out desalinization plants in the UAE and they're sunk. Now, that opens Iran up, but hell, didn't we just bomb an Iranian desalinization plant the other day? They retaliated by hitting a Kuwaiti desalinization plant. Hopefully people woke up and went, stop, because, there's issues. But Iran can resolve its water issues. The Gulf Arab states can't. That's reality. We'll get back to the nuclear thing. I don't think this ends with Iran having 60% enriched uranium. I don't think it can end with Iran having 60% enriched uranium. And I'll tell you why. Because Iran's not going to physically defeat the United States. Iran wins by surviving. And they're winning right now. There's no doubt about that. But Iran will not physically defeat the United States. We're not going to put 50,000 troops on the ground to give Iran a chance to surround them and make a Dien Bien Phu moment, where they're marching Americans through the streets of Tehran. That's just not going to happen. Trump wants out of this war. I think that's the big message right now is he's desperate. So desperate, he just makes stuff up. If the Russians can come in and negotiate an end to the conflict that meets Iran's objectives, all of Iran's objectives, not compromising, all of them. I think the Russians would tell the Iranian leadership, if you want America gone, you got to give up the 6% enriched uranium. And then it comes down to the Iranians. I know that the things have changed. First of all, we're talking about Iran now that's been bombed. The horrors that we've inflicted on the Iranian people are mind-boggling. Back home, we have no clue what we're doing. We've now run out of targets to hitting civilian infrastructure. And we're just bombing civilian homes now. We're leveling city blocks. We're committing war crimes beyond imagination. And it's not just in Tehran. We're striking other centers of population as well. Shiraz, I'm just scared to death what we've done to the historical and cultural, treasures that were in Shiraz. Isfahan, again, what are we doing to these places? We Americans, we're going to celebrate our 250th anniversary. We're in there destroying things that have been around for thousands of years. And it's shocking. So Iran's paid a huge price. So I know that the calculation has changed, and I respect that fact. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that while the fact that Iran is willing to go all the way that's what's going to enable them to win the war, is this willingness to go all the way. But at some point in time, all the way means suicide. It means everybody dies. At some point in time, though, the Iranian leadership has always talked about doing what's best for the Iranian people. And if a Russian mediator can come in and negotiate a great deal that ends all the nonsense, and the only price Iran would have to pay is giving up 60% enriched uranium. I think that's something Iran, I would advise them to do it. Because holding on to it, I don't see this. In order for Iran to get out of the NPT and have a nuclear weapons capability, you're going to have to defeat the United States. So now, does Iran have a plan that, because if we're dealing with a rational president, I think Iran has the cards. Economic strangulation. See, a rational president would actually care that there's no diesel fuel in Australia right now, because Australia is an ally. A rational president would care that there's gas rationing in South Korea and Japan, because they're our allies. A rational president would be very concerned about what's happening to the European economy, because they're our allies. We have an irrational president who is, it's a cult of personality, and it's all about the ego of him. He's the only thing that matters right now. And the Russians are unique in their ability to understand that. Putin has been playing Trump's ego, masterfully. I mean, anybody who doubts it, take a look where Russia is right now. They were literally ready in 2027 to do drastic changes, economic belt tightening that were going to have, that was going to bring real economic pain to the people of Russia. Or at the end of this year, I'm sorry. And Putin went, no, we're not worried about that anymore. Why? Because they just won the lottery. Suddenly money's just flowing in. They're going, wait a minute, we don't have to do these belt tightening things. We're solving it, and it's only going to get better for Russia economically. Why? Because Putin had patience. For all the people going, all the Gilbert doctoros out there saying, red lines, you let them red line. Well, Gil, if we had done what you wanted to do, there'd be a permanent state of warfare between Russia and Europe right now. Instead, Russia's winning across the board. There's not a single aspect of this conflict that Russia isn't dominating. So much so they were able to send, 700,000 barrels of oil to Cuba, break the American blockade because there's nothing America can do. And now Russia's patience, because they didn't react to any of the escalation, NATO's dead. Donald Trump's pulling out of NATO. It's over. Finished. Goodbye. Remember I told you Mark Rutte would be the last Secretary General of NATO? Mark Rutte is going to be the last Secretary General of NATO. Easiest call to make, because Donald Trump's easiest person to predict, which is why I'm telling you that if you don't get a negotiated deal, this egomaniac will use nuclear weapons. Because he's the guy that designed. Remember, it's under the first Trump administration that the nuclear employment plan involving Iran was changed so that we could preemptively use nuclear weapons. And the trigger is an Iranian nuclear weapon. That's the problem. If we had a rational president, we wouldn't be doing this. First of all, we wouldn't be where we're at. But we have an irrational president. And therefore, this is where I think the Russians are the only ones that can do this. There's no other nation out there right now that can serve as the liaison between Israel, the United States, and Iran. Russia has good relations with all three of them. So I'm hopeful. But again, the idea that the Iranians are going to walk away with 60% enriched uranium when this is all over, I don't see that happening. I understand where you're coming from, and I understand the sentiment, and I understand the justification for keeping it. But Ayatollah Khomeini.
I think Scott, when you talk about what
the Iran-Iraq war ended with the supreme leader saying, "I will drink this cup of poison to bring an end to this conflict."
Yeah. Scott, I think right now the main concern on the part of Iran is not the enriched uranium, because they're capable of producing at any level. They have the knowledge, they have everything, They know it's not something to be bombed, it's not something to be destroyed in Iran. Yeah. It's forever in Iran.
Forever. I agree with you. And I've said it before. I was on your show, I've said it. And I'll say it again. I've never backed away from it. Iran can already build a nuclear bomb. They've solved everything. All they need is the decision. But I will point this out. Witkoff misunderstood when Arakchi said we have 450, 460, I don't know. 450, yeah. Kilograms of uranium hexafluoride enriched to 60% uranium. And Witkoff went, "You're telling us you have the ability to build 10 nuclear weapons." I would have bitch slapped Witkoff right there and said, "That's not what they're saying, you stupid moron." All the Americans were around saying at the end of June that we don't know where it is, that the Iranians could be building a bomb. What Arakchi said was, "We're not building a bomb. We have it all, and we're willing to give it up. Yeah. Therefore, there will be no bomb. We have it all. We're willing to give it up. No bomb." There was no threat implied there at all. It was the Iranians saying, "We haven't done anything with it. We haven't enriched it up higher. We haven't turned it into metal. We haven't done anything. It's all here." And if the Iranians can make that statement today to the Russians and say, "Yeah, because if the Iranians come back and say, well, we only got 250 kilograms of it left," people are going, 3 bombs, which I think might be the case. But hopefully that isn't the case. Hopefully Iran can say, "No, we still have it all. because that means that they haven't weaponized, that they haven't taken that step. But they said back in 2024, 2025, a senior Iranian revolutionary guard people, we have everything we need, but the core. We have the warhead. We have all the safety stuff that goes along with that. All these missiles they're firing, every single one of them has components that are linked to a nuclear delivery system. I mean, so the Iranians have already tested everything. That's the other beauty of it, is we've given the Iranians all these advanced missiles they're testing right now, while they're firing. This is their nuclear delivery systems, and they work. And the components, for instance, the charges that are used to release the submunitions and all this stuff, it's the same principle that'll be used to fire, a nuclear weapon. And it's all being tested. The vibration testing is good. Everything's good. So there's literally nothing to stop the Iranians other than themselves. If they wanted, they could have enriched this stuff up to 92, 94%, 98% if they wanted to, turn it into a metal and make we're talking about basic gun design. So it'd be 12 to 20 kilotons of stuff. You don't have to test it. Everybody's like, we're waiting for the Iranians to test. We never tested it. The first bomb dropped on Japan was a gun design. Never tested. The design that was tested at Alamogordo was a plutonium weapon, a compression, implosion weapon. Gun design it's the simplest thing in the world. Slug, boom, critical mass, boom. It's not efficient. You're wasting a lot of potential, but 12 to 20 kilotons. 3 of those, Israel no longer exists. And Iran can do that. And the Iranians now know that it isn't going to get shot down. They're testing it right now. It isn't going to get shot down. And it'll hit what it's aimed at. So the Iranians are in the driver's seat. If they want, and this is why I think Russia needs to come in right now and just bring it into this and say, because you don't want to go there. Look, I know the Iranians' pride has been hurt. You've been attacked. You've been stabbed in the back. You've been bombed. You've been betrayed. My God, if I were an Iranian, I'd be screaming, nuke them. I wouldn't be sitting here trying to be Mr. Rational. I'd be saying, no, take Israel off the map. Israel deserves to be taken off the map. I have no sympathy for the state of Israel. There's no place on the earth that deserves to be nuked more than Israel. But that doesn't solve the problems. And Iran doesn't want to go down in history as that nation either. That's not the legacy of what Iran wants. So let's see what the Russians can do. Let's see if the Russians get engaged. That's still no guarantee. But I think Donald Trump is desperate right now. Desperate. I'm anxious to see what he's going to say tonight. I'm anxious to see what kind of, I love it. I forget which Iranian, was it the president or was it Aragchi that said he's negotiating with himself? It's perfect.
Yeah,
that's what
it was Aragchi, the foreign minister of Iran.
Yeah, it's perfect. He's holding a negotiation with himself. It's a fantasy. The Iranians have been very clear about it. First of all, there are no negotiations, even through intermediaries. The fact that they pick up a phone call from the Pakistanis doesn't mean they're negotiating.